I'm going to have a quick chat to you today about some uses in bushcrafting terms from the pine tree. Any of the pine species are suitable for what I'm about to sort of show you through today, and perhaps the next time you're out in the woods you'll have a chance to have a go yourself. So let's start with the first bit that we all recognise on a pine tree. This is the pine cone, the fruiting body which produces the seeds and then releases the seeds, and the cone itself falls to the ground. Old traditional and historical views of them as weather forecasters: if they're open it's supposed to be fine, and if they're closed it's supposed to be damp. Works a fair amount of the time, although today it's been raining and a few of these are open. It just depends on where they are, so it's an interesting story but not always the rule. What is true about them though is that they are very good when you're lighting a fire. They catch relatively quickly, and they also form a little coal which will help sustain a fire while you're trying to light it. So we'll be doing a bit of fire lighting later, and we'll be using some of the pine cones. So a second use from a pine tree is from the needles. Lots of interesting facts about pine needles. The key one really is that they are higher in vitamin C than any citrus fruit. Now, while the needles are very young and soft, they're perfectly edible. I'll wait to pop it into my mouth until I've finished speaking, perhaps. They're perfectly edible. If they get to the point where they're stiff and bristly, they are edible, but they will be uncomfortable to eat, and you would need to make sure you chewed them completely before you swallowed them, or they might upset your digestive system. But while they're young and fresh and small, perfectly edible, and a nice citrusy flavour. A common use of the pine needle is, rather than eating them if they've become tough and chewy, is to simply pinch them out. So you've got a good handful of pine needles, pop them in a cup of water, put it on your campfire and let it stew, and you make a pine needle tea. And that tea will contain, it'll be a very light green colour, and it'll contain all of the vitamin C from the pine needles. An interesting sort of historical fact is that the first European settlers that went to America, many of them having travelled on a ship, arrived with scurvy and found no citrus sources to stave off or cure them of the impact of scurvy. Many of them kind of died from malnutrition, and lack of vitamin C was one of the key elements of that. Eventually, having kind of discussed with the Native Americans, the Native American pointed them at the pine tree under which they were sleeping and explained to them that this could have saved their lives. So it's an interesting little fact. It's a delicious little kind of trailside nibble. Great uses in tea or eating on its own. Now, when you've made your tea and you've got little bits of pine needles floating in it, or perhaps you've made any sort of a drink in the woods, you might need to strain it. Well, hey presto, the pine needle comes back into its own again. Make a nice little pad of pine needles, put them against the lip of your cup and pour the liquid through, and this will keep all of the solids in your cup, and your little liquid will clear out free of debris. Now, let's keep going with the pine needles. Another use of the pine needle is they have a mildly antiseptic effect. So if you are lacking in any soap to wash your hands, perhaps before you eat, although this will discolour your hands and give them a green tinge, you will actually be creating an antiseptic which will leave your hands much safer to handle or eat food if you have no other means of cleaning your hands. On a stiffer bristled piece, you can also use them like a little nail brush, which will get the dirt out from under your nails, particularly useful before you'd start handling food. That's pine cones and needles.